Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Myself is Aksa Hanif. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you are all well and doing great. The video on the topic communities and ecosystems contains instructive and educational contents that is both shareable and easy to retain. So let's start our today's call. Communities and ecosystem. Communities and ecosystem contains community structure and diversity, ecosystems of the earth, and ecological problems. Let's start discussing one by one. First of all, we will discuss community structure and diversity. What is community? It is the indication that what type of organisms live in given environment, in how many numbers, and in what way they relate to each other. The elements that include in community structures are dominant species, keystone species, cycles of activity that include nocturnal animals, diurnal animals, temporal structure, spatial structure, ecological need, community stability and succession and its type. What is dominant species? The species that have high abundance relative to other species in a community are restricted in their range. Keystone species, the organisms that helps to define an entire ecosystems. Nocturnal animals that active during night, for example, oxes, foxes, etc. Diurnal animals that active during daytime, for example, mostly primates are diurnal animals. Temporal structure, the sequence in which the exploiter and mutualist interact with their common shared partner. Spatial structure, the ultimate distribution or spatial unit occupied by a species. What is ecological niche? The position of a species in an ecosystem, describing both the range of conditions necessary for persistence of the species and its ecological role in an ecosystem. Community stability, the ability of a community to resist from change. The next is succession, the process of changes in the composition and structure of species of a community over time. It is of two types, primary succession and secondary succession. What is primary succession? It is one of two types of biological and ecological succession of plant life occurring in an environment in which new plant substrate devoid of vegetation and other organisms, usually lacking soil such as lava flow or area left from deflated glaciers, is deposited. The next is secondary succession. Succession occurs in areas where a biological community has already existed but some or all of that community has been removed by small-scale disturbances that did not eliminate all life and nutrients from the environment, such as fire, flooding, etc. As you can see the process of secondary succession in this picture. Now, what is ecosystems? The interaction between living things and their environment is known as ecosystems. The elements included in these are trophic structure, producers, consumers, decomposers, ecological pyramids, and cycling. So, what is trophic structure? It is partitioning of biomass between trophic levels. What is biomass? It is renewable energy that comes from plants and animals. What is food chain? It is a series of organisms in which each organism depends on the next for their source of food. As you can see, the sequence of organisms that depends on one another for their food. Food web. It is the graphical representation and interconnections of various food chains. As you can see in the picture, one organism depends upon one or more organisms for the source of their food. Producers. Producers are those organisms that have capability to make their own food by getting energy from the sun and nutrients from the soil by the process of photosynthesis. The whole process is shown in this picture. The next is consumers. They depend on other organisms to obtain energy. It is of three types: primary consumers, that is also called herbivores; secondary consumers, carnivores; tertiary consumers, it may be omnivores. Producers, primary consumers depend upon producers, and secondary consumers depends upon primary consumers, and tertiary consumers depends upon secondary consumers. In this picture these are shown. The next is decomposers. They feed on dead or decaying organic matter for getting energy from them. For example, mushrooms, earthworms, mold, and tiny algae. The next is ecological pyramids. It shows the relationship between trophic levels of organisms in graphic form. The next is cycling, the natural pathway in which essential nutrients flow between organisms and environments that include carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, sulfur cycle, phosphorus cycle, calcium cycle, and water cycle. The most important cycles are carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, and water cycle that is described here. First of all, carbon cycle. What is carbon cycle? It is nature's way of reusing carbon atoms which travel from the atmosphere into organisms in the earth and then back into the atmosphere over again and again. The major steps involved in the process of carbon cycles are carbon present in the atmosphere absorbed by plants for photosynthesis, then these plants are then consumed by animals and carbon gets bioaccumulated into their bodies. Then these animals and plants eventually die and upon decomposing, carbon is released back into the atmosphere, eventually become fossil fuels. Then these fossil fuels are then used for man-made activities which pumps more carbon back into the atmosphere. The picture shows the whole cycle of carbon cycle. The next is nitrogen cycle. It is a biogeochemical process which transforms the inert nitrogen present in the atmosphere to a more usable form for living organisms. Its steps include foraging steps, ammonification, nitrification, denitrification, nitrogen fixation. The first step is ammonification. Nitrogen is abundant in the atmosphere, but it is unusable to plants or animals unless it is converted into nitrogen compounds. In the second step, nitrogen fixing bacteria play a crucial role in fixing the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogenal compounds that can be used by the plants. Then the plants absorb the usable nitrogen compounds from the soil through their roots. Then these nitrogen compounds are used for the production of proteins and other compounds in the cell. Then animals assimilate nitrogen by consuming these plants or other animals that contain nitrogen. Human consumes proteins from these plants and animals and then the nitrogen assimilate into our system. During the final stages of nitrogen cycle, bacteria and fungi help decompose organic matter where the nitrogenous compounds get dissolved into the soil, which is again used by the plants. Now, some bacteria then convert these nitrogenous compounds in the soil and turn it into nitrogen gas. Eventually, it goes back to the atmosphere. The sets of process repeat continuously and thus maintain the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere. This is all about the nitrogen cycle as you can see in this picture. The next is water cycle. It is also called hydrological cycle, cycles that involves the continuous circulation of water in the earth atmosphere system. Of the many processes involved of the water cycle, the most important are evaporation, transpiration, condensation, precipitation, and runoff. Although the total amount of water within the cycle remains essentially constant, its distribution among the various processes is continuously changing. This is all about the water cycle. The next is ecosystems of the earth that include terrestrial ecosystem, tundra, arctic tundra, alpine tundra, northern coniferous forest, temperate deciduous forest, grasslands, chaparral deserts, tropical rainforest. Tundra. It is treeless region which is found on tops of mountains called climate, windy and rainfall is low. Arctic tundra, the characteristics includes it is covered with ice and snow. It has short summer season about 60 days. It contains no trees. Its rainfall is very low about 25 cm per year. Soil during summer are wet. Permafrost layers are formed there. Low productivity. Animals include rodents, foxes, owls, etc. The next is alpine tundra. It is present between mountains above the altitude. Temperate fluctuate. Moderate rainfall. Grasses and shrubs are the plants that is found there. The next is northern coniferous forest. Its summer is cool, cold winter, short growing season about 130 days, rainfall moderate 40 to 100 cm per year, infertile acidic soil, evergreen forest, limited primary production, pine needles slow to decompose, elmus includes wolves, caribou, etc. The next is temperate deciduous forest. Its characteristics includes moderate climate, well-defined summer and winter, rainfall 75 to 150 cm per year. Its soil is fertile. Deciduous trees fall leaves, leaves change color. Animals includes wolves, mountain lions, etc. The next is grassland. It is also known as prairies grassland, tropical savannas. It contains few trees, grasses. Its temperature is moisture, and fire is important there. The next is chaparral. It is present between dry areas. Its rainfall 30 to 70 centimeter per year. Temperature fluctuation between 30 to 23 degree. Its plants low shrubby with rough waxy leaves. Fire animals include there. The next is deserts that is present around in world latitude 30 degree north and 30 degree south. Temperature fluctuate. Plants include cacti, sagebrush, animals, birds, rodents, etc. The next is tropical rainforests. Temperature fluctuate 20 to 25 centigrade, rainfall 200 centimeter per year, high moisture, growing season, soil in poor in nutrient, diverse life forms, stable temperature, there high humidity, animals includes annelids, arthropods, etc. The next is ecological problems that include human population growth. The causes of human population growth include poverty, child labor, reduced mortality rate, etc. The solution of this problem is promote family planning, make education entertaining, government incentives. Next include land pollution, water pollution, air pollution, and resource depletion and biodiversity. I hope you can understand the topic very well. Thank you so much.